Hey everybody, this is Silverspook, and this is the Silverspook live stream video about the enemy within, closing ranks, fractured unity, and the Imperial Boomerang, and Hegseth and Trump's war at home. So, yeah, in case you haven't heard, that's happening. I talked about this at length on the Twitch stream last weekend or on Wednesday, and so I don't have time to do as long of a discussion on it. But I just wanted to just kind of do some analysis and meaning making of what is happening here. There's a lot happening all at once. It's hard to really keep track of it all. But you know, one of the big takeaways, well, there's a few things. It's hard to really contextualize it. It's hard to know what stage of the implosion, what stage of the Imperial Boomerang we're at, what stage of the warming cold civil war the U.S. is at, and the what level of what depths the cracks in the balkanizing, dissolving United States capitalist empire it is currently, what stage of it has it reached? It's hard to know exactly. Just like looking at one thing I want to say is that, like, just looking at, because I look at a lot of like non necessarily Western, non-US and non-Western media as part of trying to not consume too much disinformation. Let's put it that way. It's early in the stream. And then, like, since I like bookmarked a bunch of the exchanges between Republicans, conservatives, Trump administration, and Democratic governors, politicians, and back and forth, and also Jimmy Kimmel, media personalities, etc., and all that. I'm getting served more from various platform algorithms, more of the like America specific politics and Western specific politics, and like I just want to say, like, it's noticeable, like whatever, like, if you are pushed to side more with liberals or conservatives, if you're pushed to side more with Democrats or Republicans or whatever of the various parties inside of your Western countries, I just gotta say, even if you aren't convinced that Donald Trump is right in what he's doing, or that, you know, Gavin Newsom is defending the quote unquote free world, whatever you're convinced of, there's so much misinformation just in consuming Western political content. Just like being around it, just listening to it, watching it. Sorry, just like being around it, listening to it, or watching it, or reading it on CNN or Fox or MSNBC. It is like it like the really, it's kind of clear to me, is like the goal, because I'm not going to say even what it is precisely, but there's so much like little the references and the metaphors, and like, you know, like, this is just like that time during the Vietnam War when X and Y and Z happened. This is like that time in the 1950s when, you know, there's so much disinformation in it. It's really bad for you. I just got to say that. Like, because I'm not trying to say that, like, I'm above all of that, not because I was born inside of U.S. occupied Hawaii, so, you know, that's the situation we're in. Raised inside of the context of the United States milieu, right? But like, yeah, it's you got it's not good. Anyway, so I just want to say that there's it doesn't really matter whether it's left, right, or center angle you come from. There's so much disinformation there, and a lot of it is obviously distraction from other things, which the oligarchy that actually runs the United States and all Western countries and all U.S. allies and former allies, they don't really want you to understand the situation that you're in. So that's why partially why I try to do like at least once a week of these, sort of like my personal takes on and like personal opening monologue, as Jimmy Kimmel would do. Not really a sermon or a homily, although my parents are Catholic, so. But it's kind of like going to alternate media. I just want to say as a kind of a preamble to the preamble is important. So seek it out. Whatever. I'm just off the top of my head. I don't know. Black Liberation Media. Millennials are killing capitalism. Red Nation. Just a few just popped into my head at the moment. I mean, it's certainly like that are like U.S. centered, or they're from people from the United States talking. That's not full of too much nonsense. The deprogram. Anyways. So let me get more to the point. Yeah, obviously, if you don't know who that is, that's Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth it has recently issued he gave a speech at Quantico to all members or generals and 4-star officers from all branches of the U.S. military. They were called in from all across the world, right? That's what the generals gathered in their masses, just like colonizers at black masses. Now, all the people on the bottom half of the screen is just like a lot of these generals are sitting there in silence. These are commanders of the U.S. Military across the world, right? And including inside the United States, national. I mean, there's technically some, the military is supposed to be used for foreign threats, right? Although, I mean, in their statement, the United States soldiers have to swear to protect the Constitution. It's important that they swear an oath to the Constitution, not to any particular individual, which is different from, or at least ostensibly, it's different from the British monarchy, which predated the United States democracy, where they swore an oath to the King or the Queen of England, right? In the United States, you swore an oath to the Constitution of the United States to protect the American people from all enemies, foreign and domestic. So obviously, Pete Hegseth, and in the recent speech, and there's a lot to talk about that, they specifically talk about the enemy within. Donald Trump and Hegseth reiterated multiple times, the enemy is within the United States. The great enemy that we have to fight. There's a war at home that United States Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, everybody has to be involved in fighting this war, right? It's a war on I guess apparently it's like it's an unacceptable thing to even talk about now. If you're against if you're against FASCS, I don't even know if you can say it, FASCISM. The pretense of the freedom of speech is part of the fracturing of the United States and the West's collective West's image that it has any. It doesn't have any. Never had any. Now it's just becoming more and more obvious how little it has. You can't say the TERR, et cetera word. Our friend Non-Compete, American Johnson Luna Oy, just made a video about how he can't say like half of the dictionary because of the censorship in the non-free speech having Western world and the United States for sure, which he is an American citizen. And so, but if you are against, let's get that list. Let me pull that list up here for everybody, just in case you missed it. So in the last week, and list of enemies of Donald Trump, or the Donald Trump states as these are threats to the United States coming from within, right? This is who the United States military is going to be used to fight war against inside the United States. That there's a lot of things happening there, right? There's a lot of things happening there all at once. See if I can get that. I want the list. The list. I can't say. Why am I having um okay. Sorry, I'm trying to find that specific list that you put out there. What was it called? Anti-American order will double domestic terrorism. I know I said the word. Trump's anti-American order will double a domestic T-word a watch list. Trump's executive order against political violence is an un-American attack on free speech. It's just like somebody else's post. Trying to find the actual. Where is the actual post though? Heinous. He issued an executive order that purports to address the recent spate of political violence, but the order is remarkably one-sided, taking the apparent position that only leftists can be violent, and it treats speech clearly protected by the First Amendment as evidence of criminal behavior. Okay, where is the list? Okay. I don't know why. I'm having difficulty finding it. But anyways, Holly, do you know where that list is? I'm not sure. Oh, okay. Okay, sorry about that. Anyways, so but basically on the list it included anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, anti-fascism is one of the things on the list. Let's see, anti-capitalism. Those who are against Christian values. It's got why am I not able to find it? Yeah, is this it? Okay, here it is. Yeah. There are common recurrent motivations of the indicia in uniting this pattern of violence and the T-word activities under the umbrella of self-described. So apparently, describing yourself as against fascism is an enemy of the United States. I mean, it's like, obviously they're trying. I don't know. I'm not sure. They're trying to make it seem as though, well, if you are people call themselves anti-fascist, but they're not actually, right? They're just T-word people, right? So, anyways, okay. These movements, I'm not going to get too much into the semantics of this. What's up, Street Cat, Grand, Scarborough, and Gio? There are common recurrent motivations and indicia uniting this pattern of violence and T-word activities, etc. These movements portray foundational American principles. Support for law enforcement and border control. Those are not American principles. Like, wanting to have laws is not the same as like celebrating police no matter what immoral, illegal, horrible things they do. And like having borders and controlling borders is, that's not an American value. I wouldn't say. It's not a value that anybody would have. I mean, like, not wanting, people that would be wanting to do harm to, American citizens and people in general in your country is not, like, that's a reasonable thing for people to want. Just controlling borders, but it's like who is being selected for, who is being chosen as an enemy or as somebody who is going to damage or attack or harm American citizens or America, right? That's more what people are contesting, right? Obviously with ICE which is just rounding people up in Home Depot without any cause. There's basically the U.S. military basically attacked Chicago. It's basically the movie Bushwick. As I talked about this on the Twitch stream. The United States, Donald Trump, and the Trump administration, there's this movie called Bushwick, where basically the diverse blue democratic liberal cities and places, right? The northeast of the United States, New York, right? New Jersey, these big urban, heavily urban. There's a lot of black, brown, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, Jewish, minorities, right? There's a lot of different communities, right? All inside of the Northeast corridor. And then, California, Washington, Oregon, right? Portland, Los Angeles. And the United States Republican militia kind of confluence of right-wing, red state, flyover state forces, they militarily invade and attack all blue cities, basically all the coastal cities. And so it's all-out war. It's just a total all-out war. There's Dave Bautista stars in this movie, Bushwick. It's basically about a U.S. Civil War. 2017 American action thriller. Military veteran Dave Bautista and a graduate student caught in an invasion of New York City by secessionist militia as they work together to rescue family members and reach a civilian evacuation point. So so in this case, it's a secessionist. In the case of the United States, it's an attempt to consolidate the United States, or it's an attempt to break the United States, or maybe it is secessionist ultimately. Although it's arguably not, because he is Donald Trump and the right and the Republicans are in control of the United States federal government. So it's not really, but it is a war inside the United States. It's happening right now. It's not at the scale of Bushwick. It's not at the scale of. There's also a movie called Civil War. I did a video about this. Civil War by Alex Garland. I bring it up a lot, especially nowadays. It's actually really relevant. People should actually watch this. Well, actually, there's a lot of things that are really wrong because Alex Garland is the upper middle class liberal British white man. That's things he's gonna get wrong. But one thing I think there's some really accurate scenes as the United States dissolves into full civil war, more active civil war. There's people that are like on their phones. Like he goes to like a grocery store, right? People are being like shot and like there's military marching outside. There's not constant warfare, but there are soldiers on building tops, right? But then if you go into a mall, right, there's like a clothing store where they're selling Gap clothes. Like Taylor Swift's album just came out, probably, right? You can buy the album. There's like, cool new jeans. There's like, you can get some music. You can get like the latest DVD, about Captain America. We're all united. Captain America, we're actually united. The Hollywood movie, right? You can buy all these products. And the person that's like working, the clerk in the mall, right? They come up and this journalist come into the store and they're like, hey, there's actually kind of like a civil war happening outside. And the girl that's working the counter, she's like on her phone, right? And she's just like, I don't really get involved with we don't really get involved with politics. That's like Blue Sky and Macedon. No, I'm just kidding. We don't really get involved with the dissolution of our country and the total collapse of everything and doing mutual aid and facing reality. No, but it's basically like, like there's like I know people like really gonna be mad about that one, but there's people that are like gonna like live in an alternate 2005 reality, and I even get the desire to want to do that. It's like a normal thing. That's why the millennials are the most nostalgic generation, is because we grew up in a time of the fall of the Berlin Walls, the height of the the U.S. and the global capitalist led order, and there was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and there was Mortal Kombat, and there was parties and cake, and especially if you're a popular person in school, it's like a great time. Your parents were boomers at the height of their wealth accumulation; they could buy you all the Christmas presents and all the Game Boys, and all the Y2K Trip jeans, Gap clothes, whatever you wanted, right? And then since 2008 approximately, or since like between 2001 until 2008 or so, it's just been downhill from there, and it's just been down and down and down and down and down and downhill. And so like trying to go back, so for millennials and zennials and for boomers in a different way, right? Everybody is living in the past in the United States and in the collective West. They're living in hallucinations of the 20th century that never really happened in a lot of ways. It was never really as great as they want it to be. Certainly for Black or brown minorities in the global South, it definitely wasn't that great. But the nostalgia is there because, and the escapism is there because things are not going well, and there isn't like a clear, easy way to make things better. For anybody that's actually honest about the situation. And so Civil War like shows those people that are like, the United States is in a civil war, and big chunks of the country simply post about pictures of their PS4 controllers, or you know, people like are just posting like Pokemon memes, you know, like half the country, and then like stuff happens, and then like, oh crap, but everyone else is kind of like, I didn't see that happen. You know, it's kind of like with COVID, right? The whole, like, much of the world is in denial. Like, yeah, everyone's losing their, everyone's getting, HIV, non-HIV cause AIDS, their brains, hearts, lungs, total organ system, and blood is being destroyed by massive, horrible pathogens that people keep getting reinfected with. And they're like, why am I sick all the time? But it was like, oh, it just must be, you know, you can see people doing that already, right? Like the reaction to this catastrophic, ongoing pandemic that I can't talk about because there's no such thing as free speech in the United States or the collective West. You can see people denying that all day long, every day. And the Civil War, the U.S. is basically in a civil war. You know, it's very cold. It's warming, but it's pretty cold. The U.S. military, however, is deployed. The U.S. military is unconstitutional. It's illegal. Of course it is, right? The liberals believe that if you point out enough, the problem with the liberal irrationality and the liberal religion, right? The conservatives like worship this weird Bible or this internal FASCISD MAGA religion or whatever it is, right? But there's an irrational, dogmatic, liberal blue worship of like textbooks and like legal documents, you know, like constitutions and like the legislation of the United States government, right? It's like, yes, the United States is having a fascist takeover. I mean, you know, it gets sliding further into one. It already is one, but it's deeper into one. Citing like the article and the line, citing sentences in American law in the Constitution is not going to stop it, right? That's a real derangement that people got there. You know, like if lawsuits were going to work, you would have stopped them the first time. I'm not saying like it doesn't do anything, but it was not sufficient to stop a person who, let's remember, Donald Trump did attack the United States on January 6th and successfully overthrow the United States, at least temporarily. With all branches of the military were involved in that, by the way, right? And parts of the U.S. Congress, it's the Supreme Court, and obviously the federal government and the executive branch. So people are in denial about that too, right? That, you know, and you know what happened was the corporate power basically put its foot down. It said like Google, Facebook, Instagram deleted Donald Trump's account, Twitter finally, right? They shut it down because they were making money from it, right? Because that's what the U.S. really is. It's this global, imperial, amoral plutocracy of chaotic billionaire and millionaire corporate interests from around the globe. Some of them are Saudi, some of them are American, some of them, you know, they're multinationals. You know, you got big oil, big ag, big pharma, big, you know, just finance. You got billionaires from Asia, Africa, Latin America, Europe that just headquarter their money in, and they move the United States to overthrow countries, start wars in this kind of chaotic, you know, capitalist free-for-all frenzy, right? That's who actually drives the United States. There's no democracy in it, right? And the United States, which drives all other Western countries, by extension, it governs them all as vassals, despite how much denial they're in. I don't care if you're in Canada or Europe. But that's part of the liberal denial as well. That's part of the religion of Western democratic, like the Democratic Party, liberal parties, delusional thinking, right? Which is that like you can stop this kind of thing. That A, that you are a democracy. B, that you can stop a harder fascist as capitalism decays into fascism. You can stop that by citing enough legal breaches. Like magic spells, right? It's like literally magical thing. It's about as rational and scientific empirically. If you actually analyze the facts of history and the facts of the geopolitics and economics of the present, which the liberal world doesn't because it believes in the capitalist lie. So it's ascientific when it comes to economics and history. It's anti-truth, actually, just like the conservatives, the liberal world. It doesn't want to analyze, right? What will you do? What has stopped fascist takeovers? They don't want to deal with that. Empirically, like actually empirically, like by the numbers, right? Like it's right? Conservatives don't care about reading at all, but the liberal will read the select texts that tell the liberal what they want to hear, but they're not going to actually analyze what stopped fascism in World War II, what stopped fascism in the Imperial fascist Japan, what has prevented its rise worldwide for the last 70 years. Those are really hard questions. What has empowered its rise? What empowered fascism's rise in Bolivia, right? What empowered fascism's rise in the slave markets and the war-torn hell that was made of Libya? I'll give you a hint. Liberals were involved in creating that fascism. Anyway, I won't go too far in just pointing all of that out. But I mean, part of the Civil War. I mean, so what I like about the Civil War is that actually, a lot of things. Again, the person who made it is a British liberal. So there's a lot of things that are like his map of where the U.S. balkanized is really weird. And I pointed this out. I made a video about Civil War, and I feel like I am vindicated in that because the United States is balkanizing the way that I said that it would in my my Alex Garland Civil War movie review / analysis video. Let me see if I can find that. I'm sure Holly has it already, but where did I make that one? I know it has that golden torch, and there it is, right here. So in this one, Alex Garland kind of was claiming that there's going to this weird snaking line, like this blob in the center of the United States. Let me see if I can find that, where the United States would break up at as it balkanized. Let me see. Yeah, here. So in Civil War, he had the Republic of California, Second Republic of Texas are on the same side. Okay. The Western forces are the Pacific Northwest, the Florida Alliance. This is when the United States breaks up in the Civil War. It's like 2028 or 2030, some unknown time. And then there's the Loyalist states, which is like all the deep, ultra blue Democrat, New York, New Hampshire, New Jersey, right? And then it's got, but then it also comes through. You got Colorado, you got, a lot of them more swing states. You got all these, some of them are like heartland red states, and then Nevada. And it's just the way he drew this map. This is just this is some out to lunch. Again, this is the ahistoricity, I would say. This is the what Voltaire called the Western illusory poison, the venom of Western illusory Christian historiography, right? But in that sense, it's Christian. But it's a lot of the mythology and the history that you get in the West, right? It's a lot of it's metaphysical. A lot of it's made up. There's some half truth there, right? So I'm a native Hawaiian, and you can't even talk about colonization. But even still, even in the liberal world, they don't really want to deal with that, right? What the history of that settler colonialism, the slavery, it's all like half truths, and the Pilgrims and the Native Americans all hugged and made up. The history of the United States in the last century, being the greatest purveyor of wars, death, destruction, poverty, purveyor of capitalism that's destroying the entire earth. Like, nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody does talk about that. Nobody really seriously talks about that. Definitely not in the conservative Western American world, and then also not in the liberal world. They're not honest about it. They'll talk about there were maybe some wrongs were done, but not like actually really that not only historically were the wrongs done, they're ongoing. And also the nation that perpetrated them is still perpetrating them. That's why liberals can't deal with PALESTINE, that I also can't say. Because liberal owned tech companies don't believe in actual rational free speech or discussion either, because it would threaten their profits. Anyway, long story short, I don't want to just get mad about that. But what I think is that this map is wrong. And actually one way you can see the United States balkanizing and it's breaking up in this civil war is the West Coast. If you look at the West Coast Health Alliance, okay, if you look at the West Coast Health Alliance, which is what? California, Oregon, Washington, and the U.S. occupied non-state of Hawaii are joining this health alliance, or they're forming a health alliance. Why are they doing this? Right? Why are they doing this? This is part of the many the multiple domains in which everything is breaking up. It's breaking up so fast. By the way, this is another thing. The balkanization, like the revolution, the balkanization will not be televised. No mainstream media is going to cover what's happening, right? Like that's one of the lies of civil war, is that someone's going to cover what's happening in America when it breaks up. Nobody's going to cover it. There's no money in that. You know what I'm saying? There's no money in covering that, because the United States is the global leader of the capitalist system. It still is. It's still leading. If Venezuela gets invaded and destroyed and blown up to seize vast quantities of oil for global multinational corporations for the profit of said corporations, it's still the United States that's going to lead that, right? Even as fraying and fragmented and broken as it is. And the global billionaire class is holding out hope that America can, maybe there'll be two Americas, but one of them will lead the invasion of Venezuela and continue neocolonialism. Maybe America will break up into three pieces, but 1/3 of America's fragmented brain will direct, we'll make another $100 billion in Elbit systems, big malfunctioning software, broken stochastic parrot, wasted NVIDIA chips, right? And they'll make another $1 trillion selling mass surveillance Peter Thiel panopticon, right? So there are still capitalists that hold out hope, as broken as America already is. It's in way more tatters than anyone's going to admit. Nobody is ever going to admit America dissolved, by the way. Maybe like 20, 30 years from now, they'll start writing about it. You are living in it right now. Let me say that again. Americans are living in, right? When Pete Hegseth said and Donald Trump said, the United States Armed Forces need to fight the enemy within, that is a formal declaration. That's a formal declaration of war on the United States of American populations, on the United States of America's citizens. That's a formal declaration of war on anti-capitalism, right? What did he say? Anti-capitalism, anti-fascism, Antifa, the organization, whatever that is. It's a declaration on anti-Americanism. What exactly that means is up to whatever MAGA's, whatever right-wingers' brain tells them anti-Americanism is. That's what it is, right? Anti-capitalism, anti-Christianity, support for the overthrow of the United States government. Donald Trump tried to overthrow the United States government. So by Trump's own statements, he is a threat. He is an enemy from within, right? But making sense is not necessary for the fascist. The thing is, it's not necessary for the liberal either. The difference between the fascist and the liberal, the fascist kind of knows it. The liberal still believes that, if you cross all your T's and you get all your I's right and you turn in a paper with an MLA format, right, and it's acceptable from an accredited United States college, that somehow that will fix, being grammatically correct will solve all the world's problems. That's the liberal religion. And the fascist knows like that. I don't need to tell the truth, right? Right. No amount of Jimmy Kimmel opening monologues, no matter how witty and scorching the retorts, right? No amount of Rachel Maddow, very smarmy, very smart jokes is going to stop the destruction of the United States of America and the global racist capitalist colonialist empire, which is actually being destroyed from external forces like the global majority, right? The 90 Africa, Asia, Latin America, BRICS, SEO et al. That I usually frequently talk about. They're the actual antagonists in this, and the U.S. and Europe are they're really secondary to history's arc, and human civilization's arc. That's actually what's happening. But another one of the psychoses or the neuroses or the again those like delusions of the Western mind. I know it because I was raised in it. Is that you are always the protagonist. right? You have toxic protagonism disorder, TPD, toxic protagonist disorder. It's like toxic masculine disorder, but you believe that everything is about America and Europe are doing everything. They're not, right? I mean, by purchasing power parity, it's definitely China, if in any sense, the real sense of the word. By largest trading by largest trading partner and the ground level economics, which is really a lot of what matters. In the nitty gritty, they're the number one, and then all their friends and the allies they have in BRICS dwarf the West already. The West is just trying to figure out how it's going to retire from being the protagonist, and not a very good one either. It's kind of like the point of Planescape Torment and Undertale, right? In a lot of ways, right? You just did a very long GENOC IDE run. You did like 500 years of the mass unaliving run and the mass theft run, and now power is shifting, but the Western mind can't deal with that. And that's part of what's happening. In France, the same thing is happening. It's not isolated to the US. France has had 5 separate prime ministers in the last 3 years, right? And the last one actually said, like, no matter how many times you change this out and the chaos that ensues, there have already been rigged elections by the center of France to install, when a left-wing, like a kind of slightly different leadership was going to come about in France, the oligarchy that governs France, like the United States, the plutocracy that's always secretly behind Western liberal democracies, installed Macron. They installed their man, right? Ukraine also, it's supposed to be a bastion of democracy, hasn't had an election in over a year. Its president and its Congress, are all legitimate. And the same kind of claims, as I pointed out, that they will make, liberals will say, well, they can't have elections because there is an enemy, and all the other parties in Ukraine are Russian-controlled parties, right? And I'm not saying, well, whatever you believe about that, that is Donald Trump's argument. America can't have an election. America can't allow Democratic governors, Democratic party, the Democratic states, Democratic cities can't be allowed to control their National Guard. Because the Democratic Party and the Democrats and liberals are the enemies from within. Like, they are an external force. Right? Just like all the other parties in Ukraine, except for Zelensky's party, are enemies of Ukraine. Only the Republican Party and only Donald Trump specifically, not just the Republican Party. Because if you're a Republican who is not on Trump's side, there are some Republicans against Trump, you are an enemy from within. So elections, Donald Trump is probably going to say something like that, right? He already tried to coup the United States. Come on. But the Democrats want to have, and liberals, delusional liberals, they want to believe that America did not have, they simultaneously want Trump to be the worst fascist Hitler ever, and that if we just talk nicely and give him a hug and turn in like a 98% A+ paper in the courtroom, right, that's going to stop him, right? Hitler was not stopped by German liberals. Okay, he was not sued out of power. Okay, you can pick up a book. I know it's hard. Pick up an actual history book. Don't pick up the New York Times bestseller list that all it's going to teach you is, the liberal version of imperial capitalist racism. Pick up an actual history book, like written by Luna, or or pick up, I say pick up a history book. There's no history books in the West. It's only very entertaining fascist fiction. But anyway, long story short, he wasn't defeated that way. That's just the TLDR. Spoiler alert, Hitler was not defeated by very well-educated lawyers and very well-educated and informed voters submitting very angry letters, right? They didn't hold up signs very, very peacefully and nonviolently in front of the Nazi army, okay? I'm just going to let you know that. I'm not saying what anyone should or shouldn't do. I'm just saying that that ideology and that stance and those beliefs, many liberals have to deal with that, right? And the way they dealt with that is by drinking a lot and writing a lot of books and just being in denial, right? They just went into denial. Like, this is not who we are, right? This is not, whenever a Westerner, an American or otherwise says this is not who we are, that is you entering your derangement syndrome. Because this is look deep into the drunken Christo-fascist Pete Hegseth, right? Who basically went on a screeching tirade, right? and said the military is there to kill. We're not there to defend. We are the secretary. We are the Department of War. You are war fighters. A, the enemy is within, and B, you are war fighters. You shoot to kill. There is no such thing as human rights. That's what he said. He said there is no. Peter Hegseth said there is no rules of engagement. Right? All of these rules of war crimes, all these rules that we created after World War II in the United Nations, the Geneva Convention, that's irrelevant. Okay, so you just said like we're not even going to pretend. Not that the U.S. and the West has been following the Geneva Convention, the UN, or international law and human rights rules. But now Peter says like we don't even care. We're not even going to pretend to follow. And in fact, don't follow it. Fight the enemy within. Fight Democrats. Okay, Peter said fight liberals, fight Democrats, fight Jimmy Kimmel, fight Governor Gavin Newsom, fight the mayor of Chicago, fight Chuck Schumer, fight the Democratic Senate, Congress, fight Democrats, liberals, anti-capitalists, anyone, right? Take power. Shoot to kill, right? He gave a drunken, like somebody, I think it was KJ No, compared it to the taxi driver monologue, right? So look into Pete Hegseth's eyes. That is who the United States actually is. Look deep into his unhinged Christo-fascist crusader eyes. That's who the West is. That's who Europe is. And Pete Hegseth is he's the Jack the Ripper, man, from Dr. Strangelove. But that is deeply what the West is. We don't care about human rights. Might makes right. Might makes right, period. Defense is something you do. It takes forever. It bogs you down. War is done sparingly and decisively with overwhelming force. We use any means necessary, right? Use the T word. I can't say it, right? Maim, overwhelming violence, overwhelming force. This is who we are. This is who we are. Now go forth and fight the Civil War. That's basically what this weekend was. Okay? I'm not saying that like all of that is going to be carried out. It's not going to be Bushwick or Alex Garland Civil War because this is reality. It's not a Hollywood movie. But the United States is dissolving. Okay? It's breaking up. It already was. Now that's like a formal declaration right there. Democrats and liberals in the United States are going to this is what they're going to do. Okay, this is just what they were doing. This is what they're going to keep doing. They're going to pretend like that person that's on their phone, going like, I couldn't be in a civil war. I'm too busy looking at pictures of galaxies. I'm looking at NGC 144526. I'm looking at the horseshoe head galaxy on my phone. I'm looking at like I'm looking at like Mickey Mouse movies. I'm watching the Little Mermaid remake. I'm in Y2K mode, man. I don't know what you're talking about. Civil War. It's 1995. What are you talking about? I'm playing Mortal Kombat. That's what's happening. That's what's going to keep happening. I hope that less of that happens, but that is what's happening. That's what I see happening. Now, Hawaii, different things are happening. I'll give you one example. And obviously I'm not saying like tomorrow there's just gonna be blood everywhere. That's not actually how wars happen, okay? And that's actually not how necessary. I mean, nobody can actually say. I'm not predicting the future. I'm not saying like this is what is gonna happen. This is what is or not gonna happen. But I'm trying to just give you the cold hard facts on the ground as I see it, okay? But in Hawaii, there is a coordinated action of Kanaka Maoli called Nawahine Ko'io Hawaii, which took place simultaneously at U.S. military installations on 4 islands to say no more desecration, no more extension of U.S. military leases, no wrongdoing, which has been a long time coming. So this is the interesting. There's many important facts about this. There's one, it's Native Hawaiian anti-imperialist, anti-U.S. military action. Number 2, it's led by women, which is another important factor that we can get into another time. But it's also on 4 islands simultaneously. So it's on the Po'akulua, which is the United States military's largest global training facility, where practices for war in Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, Korea, ultimate World War III on China, Middle East theater, you name it. And so that's under assault in this. There is there's one on Kauai, There's one at the Indo-Pacific Command of the United States. That's the global headquarters of World Empire, is the United States Indo-Pacific Command, headquartered on Oahu, Hawaii, with illegal occupation. And there's also one I believe on Maui as well. Long story short, that's just one of the things that's happening. I'm not going to say much more than that because that's not what this is about. But I'm just saying that Donald Trump dissolved a whole bunch of, and I've talked about this a lot, how like you need to have like non-capitalist, non-corporate, non-US government, even academic sources of funding. You need to have economic sovereignty so we can build a dual power structure. We can not have our hands tied by the colonizer, which is a very important neo-colonial tool, which is to get everybody on your payroll. Even you could be doing anti-colonial work, you could be doing liberational, pro-indigenous work, or researching in queer anti-racist historian, or you could be doing some kind of science, and you're doing environmental science that's going to also support indigenous people. But if your funding is coming through the empire, when it actually comes, I mean, it's very good to sustain the empire. And when you do anything that steps a little too out of line, they can bring you back in. That was a liberal order for the last 50 years at least, right? That's always been to me, that's always such a frustration. I mean, from my vantage point, some people in Hawaii might disagree, but Donald Trump broke that because he cut all the grants and funding for Native Hawaiians, Asian Pacific Islanders, ethnic minorities, people of color in Hawaii. So people are not having the university jobs. They're not going to university. Many Hawaiians that would be working even in agroforestry, in environment, in alternative energy, Donald Trump just cut it all. He said it's all DEI woke, and it all has to go because it's anti-white racism or whatever it is, right? And so what that has done is actually unlocked a huge amount of Hawaiians and people in Hawaii who no longer are tied to the empire. Right, and that's a lot of these people. I'm not saying who is who. I'm just saying I'm seeing a huge upswelling of more like at the silver spook level of politics. Let's put it that way. Let's put it like more closer to Hananeke Trask, or elsewhere. Similar to some African countries like I don't know, Burkina Faso, closer to that. And they're like, we are, since we're no longer being paid by empire. I shouldn't say that. It's not fair. The empire has taken so much from us. Now it's not even pretending to support us with funding for our Hawaiian programs, Hawaii environment, and 75% of Hawaii is not white. Also, that's an important factor. So, and the United States in Hawaii under the UN is actually an illegal occupation. So there's a lot. That's actually literally like when Hananeke Trask said we are not American. The United States banned our language, forcibly imprisoned our leaders, stole our land, and forcibly made us a colony of the United States. It's a military occupation. It's been since the 1890s. That's legally in the United Nations, right? Now, again, Pete Hegseth said we don't care about international law. Just because America and the collective West flout and violate international law and human rights, right? And the rules of country-to-country relations, right? And basic human decency every single day when they send weapons to their settler colony, right? Like what they're doing to the flotilla right now. What they did to Chris Smalls and Greta Thunberg. I mean, just because the West does that doesn't mean that there's a lot. Most of the world isn't the United States and Europe and Canada, though. Most of the world actually cares about trying to build a world with rules. So I'm just gonna throw that out there. But long story short, anyway, so back to the enemy within. And what is happening with that? So Pete Hegseth is, he's basically said that the United States is not here to, we're not here to defend anything. We're not here to, there's all this misogyny, and we're talking about Apocalypse Now and Full Metal Jacket and Doctor Strangelove. And there's that scene with the drill sergeant where he just screams racist and sexist and all kind of queerphobic, homophobic insults at people, right? And that's supposed to toughen you up in military school, right? That's directed by Stanley Kubrick. He's actually a British guy, like Alex Garland. Stanley Kubrick was directing a movie about the United States military, and I think a lot of people just thought it was really funny in the United States. I mean, certainly when I was in high school, people would like just like list off or just like quote that drill sergeant in Full Metal Jacket, where he's like calling everyone like little girls, or you're just a little, being good. It's funny because we're just watching Peacemaker, and it's like, being able to give good blowjobs is a compliment. God damn it, like, that's part of the homophobia and the fascism, or the bigotry, and just being anti-women and being this toxically masculine big bully, right? But not necessarily that is synonymous with strength, power, and competent military, right? And that's what Pete Hegseth even said. He said we're not gonna have any more model coddling. Women are gonna have to do the men requirements, right? I mean, what is that actually about? I mean, that's just about, because some of the actual generals are like, what does he mean? Because like the women already have to fulfill the men requirements, right? But it's this assumption that being women is bad and being a woman is not. You must be getting free DEI, easier time, and you're not actually competent enough, right? But Pete Hegseth wants to, and he said we want to let the U.S. military lay hands on the soldiers again, right? This is a guy who is got all kind of assault, alcoholism, all kind of problems. This guy's deeply troubled person, right? He's basically walking around the stage, right? He was kind of like preparing to do mass unaliving, which is what the U.S. military does do. So, again, in all honesty, Pete Hegseth is America. He is America. He is Europe. What he's saying is that is what it's doing. What is it doing in the Middle East right now? What is America doing there? He's doing exactly what Pete Hegseth says. When we go and we kill. He's not defending anything, right? That's kind of the joke. It's kind of like a lot of, but this is, the liberals, and the Democrats want to come in and be like, well, that's not who we are. That's not who we are. We're a very upright, human rights respecting, democratic, freedom loving country with free speech. And it's like, turn on the phone. That isn't the thing. Is all Western platforms are censoring everything that they're doing around the world. But if you can get access to the truth, which many people did for 2 years straight, because the West control of global media is collapsing too, thank goodness. And you can watch all the human rights violations every single day in the Middle East, but not just there. Sudan, Congo, anywhere they're constantly violating sovereignty all over Central South America, human rights violations by their own backed. Even Elon Musk himself even said, yeah, we'll kill whoever we want, and that's why we fund an armed fascist in Bolivia, like the Jeanine Áñez far-right extremists that massacred people in the street, right? The United States of America has been lucky that what it does routinely to South and Central American countries such as Bolivia, such as Colombia, such as Guatemala, what it has done and it still does, what it's trying to do to Venezuela. America is just lucky that it doesn't have the military gunning people down in its streets, predominantly because it's a North American gringo Anglo country, and it needs to preserve some amount of decorum. I take that back. The United States needed to preserve some amount of decorum in the 20th century. It looks like that's going away, though. You know what I'm saying? I know this seems like I'm just trying to be mean to America. I'm not. I'm just trying to be like, this is for real, though. Look at it from the perspective of the majority of humanity. Like if you are a Democrat and you claim to be democratic, right? This is the problem the problem that's always been with the United States, right? Is that the United States has never been honest about who the country is for. And it has never been for the majority of the people. Women were property. That's half of the people already for most of the history of the United States. And they were abused. They didn't even have, even the right to vote doesn't give you the right to actually change your country, but they didn't even have the pretense of democracy. Women couldn't even vote until the 20th century. For Black people and indigenous people like myself, obviously, this has never been, as Hanani K. Trask correctly pointed out, the United States gives death to Native people, which is what it did when it beat the Hawaiian out of my mom and causes mass death, including we're the lowest life expectancy, dying earlier, due to the destruction of our Hawaiian universal healthcare system founded in 1859 by Emma Kaleleonalani Na'ea Rook, a Queen's medical system, and when we had the highest literacy rate and nationalized socialist electricity, and were the most advanced country on the planet until the United States invaded and couped our country to install racist colonialist capitalism and turn us into a slave plantation and a little joyride for Pete Hegseth's Navy buddies to take advantage of Native Hawaiian women, Two-Spirit, and third gender and girls, which is what the U.S. still does, by the way. Hawaii is in the top 5 mass sexual assault and mass RAPE of young women and girls. And the number one suspect is the U.S. military. So anyway, long story short, so this idea that we're all one country and everyone's together. Everyone has never been together in the United States. The liberals' job is to put the icing on that cake. That's this a mountain of bodies and rotting flesh, and blood and cocaine covered dollars. And that's what always irks me and irritates me with those people, because and what they want is from Native Hawaiians, what they want from people of color is to just fall in line and say, yes, it's so great here. And if the brown and black people and indigenous people and other minorities say, oh yes, I love America so much, right? Then they'll give you, here's $10,000 or $20,000 a year to go to university. Here's a job working for some NGO and you can just scrape by. You can be the token brown or black person. That's why I'm a Neofeud, because it's like, the real ruler of it is Dr. Warren Clinton Bush, who is, he's a liberal ruler. So there's a deep frustration. My dad is also, he was brainwashed by the United States of America. He believes he's a white Catholic liberal man that's like 5 steps away from, being, either a prize New York Times writer, if he can be good enough at English and play the liberal, interesting thought game and write a fucking book, or become a actor or a famous playwright, or journey the world or something, right? Or join the U.S. military, right? And be great, right? He can be a great Hawaiian. I'm sorry, he's had the Hawaiianness destroyed from him. He could be a great American by journeying the world in the U.S. military. He believed, his brother did that, right? And his brother committed war crimes in Korea for America. As a brainwashed Hawaiian forced to be an American. So when Hawaii K-Trust, we're not American, that's right. Like, and so Pete Hegseth would say, well, indigenous people are the enemy within. People of color are the enemy within. Obviously, Hispanics, Central South Americans, immigrants are the enemy within to them. But not just them. Everyone is the enemy within. Anybody who doesn't think the way that I do, exactly. Democrats are the enemy within. Everyone is the enemy within. So that's, and so so the U.S. is trying to simultaneously close those ranks. Any general, they say actually any general, some people believe there's like AI analysis that's watching micro expressions as Donald Trump was making statements, right? As Donald Trump was saying, hey, you're free to laugh, but, just if you don't like what I'm saying, you don't have to clap. But, just remember, you can lose your rank and your job and all your pay. They actually believe that there was, and Donald Trump said, we're going to have to fight the war at home now. There was cameras on everyone, right? And they're analyzing the micro expressions, like the eyebrow ridge, the corners of the mouth, right? Like a 3D biometric scan of every real-time, multi-dimensional scan of every general's face and body language to determine which within the military may break the ranks during a more intense phase of the collapse of the U.S. empire and the balkanization and the civil war that's already happening, by the way, as I want to reiterate. So, and I mean, even if that's not the case, the United States doesn't have very competent programmers. That's why they got to go beg China for some more. But the China's like, why are we going to give you anything? In fact, we're not going to buy any more beef, soybeans, or corn either. So it's kind of like, how are you going to feed your army when everyone is, you have a dust bowl, and you have a dust bowl, and Brazil, Central South America, and Asia ain't going to send food, and Europe is also starving. How are you going to feed the ranks of your General E. Lee's storming of Chicago? How are you going to take 500,000 American militias, sons of our forefathers, right winger, MAGA hat wearing stormtroopers into California, Washington, and Oregon when you got no food? I mean, I don't know how that's going to work out. You know what I'm saying? I'm joking. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. But that, like, the United, let me say that again, though. The U.S. is deploying the United States federal government in violation of the Constitution, state and federal laws, not even pretending, because there's the Insurrection Act that they could use. That's actually a legal justification in certain circumstances for deploying the United States military against American citizens. They're not even pretending anymore. All that the Democrats have, Governor Newsom had the mayor of Chicago, governors of all the blue states, Oregon, the mayor of Portland. All that they have is that Donald Trump is illegal and this is not who we are. That is, let me just say, the liberals have been insufficient to stop ICE. The Democratic Party and the liberals have not done anything of any kind of meaningful impact to stop the mass fascist activity of just rounding random people based upon their color of their skin. Obviously, that's violating all kind of laws. It's absolutely immoral. It's terrible. The United States, MAGA don't care, obviously. Conservatives don't care. Just like fascists didn't care in World War II. You know, the Hitler's, even before World War II, the Hitler, the Mussolini followers, they didn't care whether it was legal or not. Right? Though the liberals who came thinking they could win with lawsuits and words and hugs, they died. Let me say that again. They died. They failed. They died or they ran away. You know? So I just want to point that out. You can. I'm not saying don't say those things. You can. It's not incorrect to point out that Donald Trump is doing illegal things and MAGA is doing illegal things. Pete Hegseth and the administration, ICE, the National Guard. Donald Trump the governor of Illinois just said order the National Guard to not be deployed against Illinois citizens. He said we don't need that. It's not a war zone. And the Trump administration said, you're going to deploy them or we will do it for you. Okay? That's not the first time. Gavin Newsom already tried to stand up to Donald Trump. Trump went after the biggest first. California is the biggest. California is 14% of the United States GDP. California is almost 40 million people. It's a good over 10% of America's population. Gavin Newsom was defeated. Let me say that again. Gavin Newsom ordered the National Guard not to be deployed and to be used in tandem with ICE to do these illegal ICE deportation fascism, right? The Trump administration countermanded that. The Supreme Court, which is in his pocket, backed him up, and that failed. Okay, so that's not, you're not looking that strong, you know. So all the blue states, all the Democratic Party and the liberals, they're losing and losing and losing and losing. Now, there is something that is stopping ICE arrests, but it's mostly actual leftists. It is anti-fascist. The thing is, as fascists, the Trump administration, MAGA and Pete Hegseth, just like Hitler, right? To Hitler, an anti-fascist was that was an enemy from within. That's why he killed them all. Right? That's why he killed, deported, imprisoned, and then killed them all. And also, if you're communists and socialists, those are all, because they're basically all on the same side. That's why even Oppenheimer sent money to fund the communists in Spain, because they're the ones that were fighting the fascists, not liberals. You know what the liberals are doing in Spain? They were giving speeches, making money, and then trying to pack up their Rembrandts and big stacks of cash, right? And then trying to get whatever money they could, resources and land, liquidated so they get out of there. You know, and they go party in Argentina or something. You know, go find the next not collapsed country to plunder, right? And then they left the actual people that fight fascism to fight it. Okay, so what the Democratic Party is doing, they're in the pack up, liquidate the resources. The liberals are, let's liquidate the resources and let's like say nice words and prepare to get out, right? With all the money we have on the jet planes that we own, right? And there was a boycott of the people. They gave up on their Disney subscription, right? And that did have some blowback on Trump. And there's a good number of people that, are still there. But, the United States buying power and the United States Disney sales and these things, these are going to be of dwindling importance over time. I mean, and so I'm not saying like, obviously people should, vote with dollars whenever they can. People should do whatever they feel like they need to do. I'm not saying what you should and shouldn't do, but it is actually the actual left, those that are against fascism, those that are against ICE, and all kind of various community forces that were actually have been, and still are, de-arresting people in California, in New York, or everywhere else, where the, ICE and other military and other forces, Homeland Security at all, are coming into, right? It's basically Trump's fascist army of all these combined loyal to him forces, right? Because obviously ICE and border are the most that are like, they're ideologically, people sign up for those to they have a real supremacist agenda a lot of the time. They're like, I want to get rid of these people in my country. They're not necessarily there to protect and serve the community, right? A lot of them, not saying every single one, but it's disproportionately in ICE, in Border Patrol, and compared to other agencies, it's compared to National Guard, or compared to just the general U.S. Army. Now, I'm not saying the U.S. Army doesn't do war crimes across the world, because of course every single war the U.S. is in and an action it takes is a war crime and global plunder. But like, people sign up to ICE and border to basically be toxic, racist, get to fulfill their dreams of ridding America of all the Central South American and unwanted brown and black people, basically. Well, they're having a hard time with the black people, although a whole bunch of black people, like 95% black building, was all just like violently mass arrested and terrorized in the last this weekend, or in yesterday with the Chicago attack, which it was a military attack, by the way. It was the military flew into a black area. That's actually the preparation. So all the Cowboy Carter and all the black people, black Americans who are like, well, we can go with the MAGA administration. The conservatives, they won't turn on us, because we're real Americans. White America, nobody is pure enough for the fascists. Nobody is pure enough for those that are their life and their ideology is premised on their own self-serving interests, which is what a capitalist, imperialist, racist, and fascist is just like the capitalist, imperialist in decay, right? Or it's like the racism when it comes to its forefront. So nobody inside of the United States actually believes, nobody ever will be pure enough. For Pete Hegseth, nobody ever will be ultimately pure enough in the long term, right? If they, that's why, like, if you throw trans people under the bus, if there's lesbian and gay people that some of them choose, right, to say, well, we have LG and the B and maybe just the L and the G, but not the T and all this. That's based upon a belief, a deluded belief that there's some kind of limit where we can stop the racist, bigots, and extremists. In that system, if we just, it's like J.K. Rowling and Hermione Granger's actress Emma Watson. Emma Watson's like, I can change her mind if I just have a good heart-to-heart talk with her and just give her a big hug. And J.K. Rowling was like, no, like there is an enemy from within Britain. It's very similar to Pete Hegseth. J.K. Rowling's like the billionaire book published author version of Hegseth in some ways. There's an enemy from within. They're destroying Britain. They're destroying our society. Every day, I'm being unalived by trans people. Everywhere I look in the bathroom, they're coming out of the walls to get me. It's like they're like, but you need to, like, that toxic, overinflated threat. That's a term in the military. That's how you get people to fight imperialist wars and destroy and kill millions of people for your own personal profit as a global billionaire oligarch, is you inflate threats, right? That's what the Crusades were. It's like, there's this horrible threat. It's called, there's the Muslim world, and any second they're going to overrun us all, and they're all savages, and they're all going to come and eat all our good Christian entrails, and and the indigenous people are all out there to skin you and take off your scalp, and like, it's actually you the ones that are going to their villages and ripping their top of their head off and selling it for $15. So, but you have to inflate the threat. So Pete Hegseth is like, inside of the United States, around the world, and in the United States, every war is enemies, 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 enemies. Under every rock and under tree, right? You know, there's a movie called The Hurt Locker that's about like when you go into a war zone and you're actually under threat because, well, if you're a Westerner, like the U.S. military in Iraq or the U.S. military in Vietnam, you better be worried about threats at all times because, you know, you're an occupier. You're committing the highest crime in international law. It's called the war of aggression. So of course you better watch your back. And then you're just perpetually pumped full of cortisol and adrenaline, and you can never exit the war footing. Constantly, and you start shooting at things in the dark, ducking every time you hear a loud noise, because you know that's the situation. It's war. But that's a war that you have instigated. I mean, maybe the individual soldier hasn't, but it is the United States that instigated that war. And if you weren't occupying someone else's country, they wouldn't have to resist. And by the way, they suffered more total deaths by bombings, napalm, etc. in Vietnam, and they similarly in Iraq. But that's part of the Western derangement syndrome, right? Is to constantly see everyone as out to get me, as a security threat, right? And any conversation can be shut. If you are in the toxic masculine, like Western, like wild animal mode of war, right? This is how you can win elections. Just send everyone into the frenzy, right? It shuts down critical thinking. Like you literally you just operate from your brainstem, right? There's like fear and then rage and the threat detection, right? And any moral compass, any mammalian empathy, any higher cognitive functions in your neocortex and long-term planning and seeing complex system all get shut down, and then you just see enemies everywhere, right? And so, and like I would say, that's a lot of what the phase. That's the mode that J.K. Rowling is in a really different kind of context, but it's very similar, right? When you look at what she says, everything is like anything that anyone says, no matter how kind-hearted or empathetic it is, it's irrelevant because I'm at war for my survival as a billionaire, very privileged, very safe person. It's delusional, but her delusion actually echoes the entire West delusion, right? Which is that. Either the liberals is like, we're totally safe and we're totally fine, but there is a war and we're at war with the Republicans, and if we got rid of them, then somehow everything will be back to normal, right? And that's also delusional, right? The Republicans are like, we have to get rid of liberals, we have to get rid of anyone against capitalism, anyone who's atheist is also an enemy of the United States. That's another interesting one. Anyone who is against, just a whole long list. It's actually, when I analyzed it, if you take atheists, people who don't believe in traditional family values, that's a lot of people. Like a lot of people don't have standard families. 50% plus of people under the age of 40 are queer or support LGBTQ plus people and non-standard family and sexual orientations, right? If you add up queer people, LGBTQ plus people, that would all come under that. Anti-capitalist, 50% of the United States is against capitalism. It's even more, over 50% of young people, like millennial and younger, but altogether it's about half that's against capitalism, and the capitalist socialism is about even, right? So, according to Donald Trump, that list of the ideologies and items that will make you an enemy of the United States. According to that list, most of the United States, right, is the enemy of the United States because it's the majority of people if you added it all up. So you know that's like it's a totally unhinged. Totally. It doesn't ultimately. It can't even really be enforced, right? But again, for a fascist, that's not really relevant. They don't care, right? They don't care whether it makes sense, whether it is technically correct, whether it's legal. Right. What matters is like whether they have the power to do it and if they can get away with it, and that's it. And right. So that's where and so that's the that's the state of things. So anyway, long story short, so that's where like for those people who are still more on we're gonna vote our way out of this, right? And we say, well, I mean, that assumes there's gonna be an election, right? That assumes there's gonna be another election. I mean, even if there is an election, that's not necessarily going to fix. No election has ever fixed any of the problems in the United States for over 200 years. For the very short life of the United States, it will be gone soon. In my opinion, it's already disintegrated. Look at it. But that assumes even to try to solve things through an election, that assumes there's going to be an election, right? Now, when you measure that, then you see the delusion of the liberals again, which is that like, oh, well, this is not who we are. It's going to go back to normal. I'm going to just go back and like look at pictures of fucking, I don't know. I'll go look at pictures of the like 1960s American spacecraft, or I'll go look at some Disney movie or whatever. And I'm not saying don't watch movies and get distracted from the not great present, but like that is not the reality. You know, that's not the reality that you're in. You know, if you want to actually not necessarily like you're personally going to stop all of this, because actually ultimately I don't believe that the United States is capable of stopping what's happening. You know, it's not capable of stopping the, again, it's not even really about what the Trump administration, what MAGA is not doing. The United States cannot stop the rise of the global majority. It cannot. There's 1 billion Africans that are getting free. The revolution is happening in Africa, period. Right? Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, I talk about this a lot, more on the Twitch stream, but that is happening whether Americans approve of it or not, whether France approves of it or not, okay? Whether Europe in general and the West approve of it, and that's irrelevant. It is happening. It's going to keep happening. It's accelerating. China just created the world's tallest bridge on the planet that like dwarfs the mountain range around it for less than the price of an F-22. Okay? So like they're living in the Star Trek future over there. The United States and the West, which is white supremacists, is never going to accept that. They're just in total denial. Just in total denial. Liberals and conservatives, absolutely in total denial. Some of the younger people are figuring out, oh my God, we you know, and some more people that can actually, you have to be able to like extract yourself from the unhinged nonsense of Western discourse. But if you can, then you're like, whoa, what the heck? And all those people are leaving America. You know, the most talented and competent people in the United States, science, tech, engineering, mathematicians, they're leaving America. They're leaving Europe. They're leaving the West, right? They're going to China and other places like that where they're advancing leaps and bounds. And they have all the top 10 universities are all Chinese now, basically, except for like maybe just a small handful. And the university costs, the most advanced university on the planet, Tsinghua University, is $700 a year tuition. And the food costs is like 1/10 of the United States. And healthcare is basically, it's almost free. It's basically free. So people, you know, like whatever the Democrats are promising, Medicare for all, Bernie Sanders is out there giving a speech in Chicago right now. And like, you know, I'm not saying he shouldn't give a speech right now. You know, again, I was never a fan of Jimmy. I did a video about Jimmy Kimmel. I'm not a fan of Jimmy Kimmel. I'm not saying Jimmy Kimmel shouldn't fight back. You know, people do whatever they feel like they got to do in that moment. You know, I'm not saying that like Donald. I'm not saying that you know. I said this cannot be stopped. I mean, like how the United States and the Western racist, capitalist, colonialist, now neo-colonialist imperial system, right, adjusts to its downsizing, right? That's actually what's happening. And now inside there's more fights over the dwindling resources inside of the tumor is causing the tumor cells in the conservative and liberal branches of the West to fight over what remains. That's actually what's happening. The US dollar is exploding, right? Gold is reaching all-time high. It's part of because the global instability in the US dollar hegemony is being destroyed right now. It's imploding. It's all the gold in Fort Knox and the UK. It's all being questioned. It's all being stacked by the global investors actually pivoting away from the West. It's an interesting statistic. It's interesting watching what people even in the game industry were talking about when Saudi Arabia, the Saudi Arabian entity bought EA Games, one of the biggest game companies in the world. EA Games was bought for $50 billion. Part of this is because the AAA game industry is collapsing, because capitalism itself and the game capitalists by extension are also collapsing. But part of that is also that the financial headquarters of the world is shifting out of the United States. Now, there's many who still they still hold on to, and they're trying to those who want to maintain that kind of that hard imperial capitalist order that's been in place for 500 years. They're trying to still they're holding on, and they're waging their bets, hoping America can pull through so that they can keep doing wars and invasions and coups and stealing resources with it. America still has 800 to 900 military bases across the earth, right? But every day that gets more, that's why there's actions being taken all across the earth, increasingly so, because America is getting weaker and weaker. If America does fight a civil war, like if America does fight a civil war, how are you going to fight if America goes to full civil war inside the United States of America, how are you going to fight? How are you going to maintain Hawaii base? How about Guam? How about Puerto Rico? How about your little settler colony in West Asia, in the Levant? How about AFRICOM? How are you going to maintain all of that if America is erupting? Now, some people think, America can fight the inside war, and America can fight in the Ukraine, European theater. It can fight Africa. It can fight Sudan, Congo. It can fight Middle East. It can fight Iran. It can fight China. There are some who believe that. Some people are just like, well, it's just a giant grift. They're not going to win any wars anyway. They never have. It's partially true. It's just a military-industrial complex grift to sell multi-billion-dollar broken boondongles like the F-35, which it is also that. But the U.S. military does still present threats everywhere on the earth. And the coups and color revolution and interventions, non necessarily direct military interventions of sponsoring the T word everywhere, that's part of how Africa is getting free, is because they actually stopped the U.S. and France from being able to disrupt and overthrow their countries. That's why Africa in Burkina Faso and the AES, the Alliance for Sahel States, are building free housing and giving away free medicine, and people are living better lives in Africa than in America. I'm sorry, that's what's happening. People in the revolutionary, they don't necessarily call themselves communists or socialists, but that's basically what they're doing. They're taking the money from the private owners, many of them European, French, and American capitalists, and also German and all the other countries that have carved the continent up, and they're using the resources for the people. Right. And so people are living better lives there. African Americans are moving back to Africa and they're living their best life. Nigerians in the UK are exiting and moving to Africa and they're living much better lives. And the West is telling itself it's not who we are. As the United States military is deployed, as Britain is arresting members of parliament because they're enemies within. Right. That's what Keir Starmer did. This is not again. I know there's a lot of liberals on YouTube, and they're probably very upset about it. There are many Democrats on YouTube be very upset about this, but there's also a lot of Republicans too. There's a lot of Westerners on YouTube, I would say. But it's the phenomenon of seizure and hardening violence of the state and through its military, police apparatuses, etc., is not unique to the United States. This is happening in France. This is happening in Britain. This is happening all across Europe. It's happening in Canada. Is been taken over by a freaking banker. People in Canada were celebrating. We have somebody that can speak in complete sentences, and doesn't rattle on in cocaine addled nonsense like Donald Trump, right? Keir Starmer, Mark Carney, he was the former lead banker. He was the lead bankster. He was the lead oligarch. He was basically a made man billionaire himself. He was a banker for both the Canadian central bank and the British one. And he's liquidating, he's doing austerity to the max. He's gutting whatever remains of the Canadian welfare state. Why is he doing that? Because Canada's running out of money. Why is Canada running out of money? Because entities like Barrick Gold, a Canadian multi-billion-dollar mining firm that used to get 99% of Mali's gold, right, in Africa, which Canadians don't think about Africa and Mali unless it's to look at a National Geographic of a starving African child. But all of the nice things are funded by plundering like multiple tens of billions of dollars of Canada's wealth, and its imperial structure of stealing from the global south and then showering it on the middle, particularly the white settler middle class of the Canadian people. Ask the First Nations of Canada how they've been treated in the ongoing historical genocide in their residential schools. But all of that Canadian, the good times, that's all with vast quantities of that was maintained by stealing Africa's gold and a lot of minerals in Central South America and being the trading house in the Toronto Stock Exchange. And that is drying up. So what's happening? Now they're putting a Goldman Sachs vampire squid style banker in charge, just like the U.S. did install into Italy and the PIGS in the 08-09 financial crisis to liquidate all of their whatever wealth was being used for infrastructure and public services, and stick it into the collapsing global financial capitalist heist system, which is what the global financial capitalist system is, that was dying in 08, 09. Now that's happening to Canada. Canada is being ripped to pieces. And a lot of Canadians, I mean, it's weird because they're over there like clapping, like, oh my God, look at how well spoken he is. Like, he can cross all his T's and dot all his I's. Like, he could probably get a 1600 on his SAT. Okay? Like, that's one of these delusions of the West too, is that like if you show up, like Obama was very well spoken and he passed actual tests at Harvard, unlike George W. Bush, because he's a black man. And he's a diversity, that's your DEI, I know. But Obama actually passed, that doesn't make him like the best president to actually, in terms of making the world a better place. He was the best president to save the dying imperial capitalist system, which is one of the worst things you could ever possibly do. And he dropped more drone bombs on people, including American civilians, than George W. Bush. Again, so that was a bipartisan racist capitalist imperialism under George W. Bush and Barack Obama, and under Joe Biden and under Donald Trump. Now Donald Trump is a little more chaotic with the way that Donald Trump is a little more like, he's less solidarity with the empire. He's all more about himself. Global policies basically don't change though. None of the policies ultimately change. But he really doesn't care about the maintaining the imperial order. He's trying to smash Star Destroyers into each other on his way to controlling power, right? Which is why like a lot of the global majority call Donald Trump the great. You should give him a Nobel Peace Prize, because Donald Trump is destroying the empire from within. In that sense, Donald Trump is the enemy within. Pete Hegseth and Trump are the enemy within for global empire, because they're so disruptive to it. They're going to break it all. And that doesn't make Donald Trump good, or you shouldn't like him or vote for him. I'm not saying that either. But you know, that, so anyway, so that's why it's really complicated. And like, I don't obviously I don't like this guy. I don't like Pete Hegseth. I don't like his generals either. I don't like the governor of California. That guy like celebrated throwing homeless people around and, you know, working for landlords. And, you know, he's been just like all U.S. politicians. He's been a corrupt servant of capital and of big business and of big, you know, real estate. I mean, I don't like this guy. I mean, he's a little bit nice. He doesn't say mean things to minorities and queer people. He made a really weird comment. Gavin Newsom was like, in California, I'm the leader of the free world now. And, you know, everyone's going to have free haircuts, but only nice, handsome guys, or some really strange comment. I was like, I'm not sure what he meant by that. But it's like, you know, I'm going to be, you know, and it's like, you know, if California and the West Coast held alliance, which is breaking away from the United States, I got to wrap it up because I got to do this afternoon event. But anyways, so California, coming back to this, right? So California, Oregon, and Washington are launching a new West Coast Health Alliance to uplift scientific integrity and public health, right? And there's also a Northeast Health Alliance, right? Because RFK, this is the health angle, which is that Northeast Health Alliance. RFK is basically saying he's anti-medicine, right? Basically, in general, we're gonna not have vaccines just in general, not just COVID, but we're not gonna have a normal vaccine schedule when it comes to measles, mumps, rubella, flu, or anything, right? And also Tylenol. Anyway, there's like so many of these things. It's hard to talk about them all, but it's just this anti-scientific, anti-health, anti-public health, just horrible crap. So. I mean, I'm not saying that like I'm not anti-vaccine, like, so, but I like I said before in previous streams, I'm not I criticize a lot of liberal stuff, so I will give them this, like, at least, you know, like, I have problems with the education system and the way that they deploy science, but like being anti-science and defunding the National Science Foundation and getting rid of the Department of Education is not a solution to the flaws of the American education and science. So you know, as somebody who I do like science, I like not, you know, Holly and I have been masking everywhere we go, and Holly and myself and our kids, 4 of us, we have been sick with COVID, flu, cold, respiratory tract infection, you know, stomach bug, anything. We've had zero infectious diseases in almost 6 years now. Okay, none of us have had a single cold. We have not had a cough, runny nose, or anything like that. Not even like oh, my throat's scratchy and my eyes are all nothing. Okay, so I just want to say science works, masks work, mask up, because even if you get the vax, your immune system, if you're getting colds like multiple times a month or like even once a month, your immune system is damaged. You already have acquired immune deficiency syndrome, also known as AIDS, and you got it by contracting multiple times over and over a BSL level 3 pathogen, okay, that targets T cells, B cells, and your white blood cells. It harms your immune system like HIV, okay, and that's why you're getting sick all the time. Please mask up. That's just a little PSA for you. So I love science. So I just want to get, at least liberals, like, they do some science. I'll give them that. They do some actual studying. I wish they studied more, books that are a little more, better on historical global perspectives, but at least they do some reading. But conservatives are like, nobody needs to read anything ever again, except like go to some PragerU sermons. The U.S. education system is being run by PragerU, by the way, which is a far right extremist organization. Anyway, 7 northern U.S. states, northeastern U.S. states, including New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, have banded together to form a new public health coalition that will make its own vaccine recommendations in response to Trump administration's changes to vaccine federal policy. I want to get a picture. That's what I want. So, long story short is this is part of that. On the health front, northeast health. I want to get like a map so I can show this. And I gotta go. I know it's already 1. Yeah, I really gotta go. So the Northeast South Alliance. Here's a good picture. Okay. So we have the Northeast South Alliance, and then we have the West Coast South Alliance, right? You look at those states, okay? Now all you got to do is you got to add in like Illinois, maybe Michigan, but those are a little more swing states, okay? These are the states that represent. These are the deepest blue Democrat, right? They're very racially diverse. They have a large quantity of people of color, large quantity of highly educated professionals, right? They rely on H-1B visas. They disproportionately rely on H-1B visa immigrants, and to do a lot of the biotech research for Pfizer, Moderna. Johnson & Johnson is headquartered in Jersey, if I'm not mistaken, in the Northeast. Okay, so they do Tylenol. They produce Tylenol. All the big entertainment, Hollywood, Jimmy Kimmel TV, MSNBC, CNN, ABC, all the big networks. So what do they have? They have, I calculated, approximately 100 million people. So they're a smaller percentage of the geographic landmass of the United States, but they're more densely populated, right? In these big mega coastal sprawl cities. They're like heavily urban. Most of the population is urban. Right, Los Angeles is, I forget how many multiple millions of people, huge cities. The rest of the United States is more rural, more spread out, more red, Republican. And because they rely, if you look at it, they rely on big pharma, and they do vegetable agriculture. Like California has the salad bowl, one valley that grows like over half of all of the kale, broccoli, lettuce produced by the United States is grown in this one area of California. So that's why. So Democrats obviously lean towards vegan, vegetable, biotech, like vaccines, and then you have beef, right? Beef, because Texas does beef, right? And a lot of the red states do beef. They do oil, right? More of that disproportionately, and they do selling hydroxychloroquine, right? Or just like, because think of it economically. The red states have a disproportionately low amount of H-1B visas. They don't have a lot of big biotech, biopharma, medical supply. You need smart scientists. You need scientists, people with degrees to research new treatments for various kinds of cancer, right? If you want to make a better, what is that one? They're always on NPR, but when I used to listen to it, I don't listen to it a lot now, but I know all the liberals because my family is most of them are, and but like Merck, all these big medical machinery, medical device, medications of various kinds. That's all controlled. They need the immigrants, H-1B immigrants. Well, they use them to do a lot of research because you can pay them less, et cetera, et cetera. Big tech, a lot of it. The weird thing is the big tech since 2020 has realigned more with Trump, especially with the last election. You got Elon Musk. Remember Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Google. They all like nuked Trump's accounts. That's when Truth Social. That's when Telegram. All these alternate social media platforms started emerging. Is because Trump's overthrow of the United States of America. Again, he has already tried to do it. They have failed to stop him from becoming president again. One more comment about that. That means either liberals want Trump to become president of the United States because they're subservient to an oligarchy and their job is just to do this pantomime WWE theater where Democrats and Republicans pretend like one is fighting for the democracy and the 200. Gavin Newsom just gave this like really WWE speech about we're fighting for the 250 year great American civilization. You know, the separation of church and state and the separation of powers of the executive, legislative, judicial branch. You know, supine, separate powers in a great, vibrant democracy with free speech. And he's giving this great speech, and I'm like, I wonder how much the military-industrial complex and Merck and Pfizer and the global billionaire class and Saudi Arabian EA purchasers paid him to say that. I mean, it's probably a lot of money to pretend like America's a democracy. I don't know that that's the case, but what I'm trying to say is that like if they really didn't want Donald Trump elected, right? If the Democrats really were, and America really was a place that's really a democracy, and you had somebody that literally did fascism, he did a totalitarian, authoritarian takeover. Why wasn't he put in jail? If the legal system works, and if he is a convicted felon, why isn't he in jail? Either your legal system doesn't work, courts and law, the system doesn't work. You want him there because you're part of the liberals are liars. I mean, obviously, but you're lying about the fact that you don't want him there. You don't care. You just do whatever your funders tell you to. As AOC said, 97% of the time what they're doing is answering calls from various lobbying groups of moneyed interests and determining what exactly to do based upon their puppet masters. So either like you're just playing games, right? Gavin Newsom, the Mayor Lightfoot, and you you're paid actors, all of you. You want Trump to be there. You're supremely incompetent. Or I mean, there's no other explanation. I mean, or it's one of those three things, right? I just want to point that out. But also, like in these regions, right? So that's why Donald Trump is going after Kimmel. He's going after the news. He's trying to put Larry Ellison in charge of Paramount, right? All of his friends are consolidating power in the entertainment industry. That's what the blue states have. So again, Trump's enemies within. Look at this map. That's his enemies. That's a lot of his biggest, most powerful enemies, right? The left in the United States is not very powerful, unfortunately. The Communist Party is like CIA and FBI agents talking to each other about what they're going to have for lunch. They hope they can get Maduro's empanadas and some Mexican pizza when they go to invade Venezuela. They're not going to get it. Just like they're not going to get China's rare earths. But anyway, these regions have those power. If you look at what Trump is doing, a lot of what he's doing is actually chaotic, though. It's not very strategic, but he is militarily targeting all the blue states, right? Most of the states that I'm listing here, or that are on this list here, they have been invaded by the federal government of the United States against the will of the people and the governors of those states. Let me say that again. The federal government and the United States military as a whole has invaded all of these states and has troops inside of them against the will of the governors of those states. The United States is experiencing what it did to Iraq, not even close to this scale, but what it did to Iraq, Vietnam, and 800 bases across the earth. What they did to Hawaii, right? Democrats, it's just called a slow military buildup, right? You slowly put a base here, you put another base, you put one close to Fallujah, you put the bases, right? You slowly build the military up, and then by the time you oh my God, what is happening? Then the United States controls your country. Then they can destroy your people, and that's what happened to Iraqis. I'm not saying that everyone in California is going to go through the Iraq Fallujah experience and get shot by Donald Trump's tanks and guns, and everyone's going to die. But Donald Trump is deploying over time, slowly warming up the cold civil war by deploying more and more and more military forces. He just hit Chicago, right? Everyone is a test. Right? the thing is, Donald Trump doesn't respect liberals and Democrats. He said I respect Xi Jinping, I respect Vladimir Putin, I respect Russia, I respect China, I respect North Korea, I respect countries that actually push back. That's also what the tariffs were, was like, who's going to push back? Now, of course, that's all self-defeating ultimately, but like Trump even said, as I pointed out, he said, when he was asked about Charlie Kirk, I don't care about Charlie Kirk. I'm building a $200 million Olympic, a beautiful ballroom. I have this beautiful structure. It's going to impress Xi Jinping when he comes. We don't want Xi Jinping to be standing out in the rain on this field. Like, what? That's all he wanted to talk about, right? As I pointed out before, ultimately, like if you listen to what he says and what he's actually doing, like he does really seems like what he's doing is he wants to make America what the West says that China is. I mean, whether you, right? I don't want to even have to explain that in the YouTube right now, but whatever you believe. China is a CCP, communist, authoritarian, undemocratic place where everyone is just constantly having the human rights violated. And Xi Jinping, his jackboots will show up to your door if you ever post a Winnie the Pooh image, because it's to silence all criticism of him. And so Donald Trump is trying to build the imaginary America that Trump is reacting to the Western image they paint of China. And of other, China and Russia as these horrible authoritarian regimes. And he's like, those people everyone loves Xi Jinping over there. Everyone stands and they salute, and everyone, they're really together. They have beautiful marching bands, and Trump had a really terrible, sad, disorganized marching band. A lot of American military don't really like Donald Trump. I think Trump is pissed off at the military, right? Because he's like, they were disorganized. They kind of didn't do a very impressive march for me the last time I asked them to do a march, And obviously there's other more sophisticated strategy going on there, but and he's like, when I go to China, when I look at Kim Jong-un, these guys have tens of thousands. They have huge parades that dwarf us. They all love their leader. They're organized and together, and it's really impressive. And I'm not into this, So I gotta make America like China, and China is just, everyone is just like. The iron fist of, Hitler, Xi Jinping is just punching everyone every second of the day. Every time anyone opens a cover, the Chinese military jumps out and strangles them, right? That's what's in all Western liberal books. Go read a New York Times bestseller. That's all it is. It's a bunch of Russia and China is a bunch of thugs just running around shooting everybody for saying one mean word that could possibly be construed to be about Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping. That's basically what Western, that's like all John le Carre, all the fucking spy novels, techno thrillers, Tom Clancy, all of Liam Neeson's career is just playing somebody who got his daughters taken by the fucking Russians. And Donald Trump, now I'm not saying that Russia is flawless and the perfect place, and China has never done anything wrong. But be real, come on. It's Cold War propaganda, a lot of this stuff. It's a lot of it's overhyped. And there's a 1.4 billion people, is poverty alleviation the most successful country, and a 96% approval rating by a Harvard-owned research. Harvard political scientists actually concluded that over 90% of China approves of their own country's government, and they think they're a democracy. More Chinese think they're a democracy than Americans think they're a democracy, by a long shot. Just as one other example. But that's not the image that the West displays of China. They show it as some kind of horrible authoritarian dystopian regime. So Donald Trump is like, okay, well, if China has really cool parties and everybody loves him, they love their leader, and it's so together, and it's really great, and they have great party. Johnson, he's a real estate guy. He's a WWE real estate agent, real estate guy, and he's a reality TV show host. He wants people to clap for him, right? And he just doesn't like it. I think he just didn't like it when whatever the rules are. I think partially he just didn't like it when the generals were so quiet. Having a dull audience, it's not fun for a performer. You don't want a tough audience. You want people clapping. Anyway, so I said, you just loosen up, lighten up. Anyway, I'm kind of spiraling into too many directions. Long story short, so that's what a lot of the holding on to power inside the United States is. I believe it is for whatever reason it is an attempt to consolidate the power and to attack Trump's enemies, which you can see in this region. And again, I'm not, and I will give them this. At least these states are doing something on the health front, right? And I feel over time, I threw a lot of criticism at the liberals. Ultimately, though, it's Americans, whatever their political ideology, whatever they believe, they're going to have to decide what they are going to become. But I just want to say that, like, this is a breaking apart of the United States. The federal government has ordered these states to not vaccinate the children to vaccinate at a far lower frequency. They're changing the rules on the COVID vaccination, and all of these states have united to create an alternate regulatory. They created an alternate Department of Health. So they're countering the federal government. They're directly disobeying the federal government. Okay, the federal government is militarily usurping the power of this. The states are supposed to be able to control their own internal affairs, right? This is part of what the U.S. had a civil war. You may have heard about it. Okay. Similarly, right? Donald Trump is trying to destroy the economies, in part. I mean, he's destroying all of America, but he's in some of these attacks. It's really targeting H-1B visas because that will disproportionately hurt the economies of biotech, research, and big tech finance firms, big tech and big finance firms that are all in that corridor, right? J.P. Morgan, BlackRock, the biggest financial hedge funds all in the Northeast, Merck, Pfizer, Aetna, Cigna, all that. That's all definitely out of the MAGA Republican purview, right? Attack those, attack the cities, attack those power centers, right? And try to weaken them as much as possible, right? To prepare for total seizure of all power. So, I will give the credit. I mean, at least the liberals, some of them are understanding, like, we have to draw some lines somewhere, and figure out what they can do. One of the problems is that, like, I feel like what should happen is that liberals should listen a little more closely to the actual left of various types. You know, whether they are socialist or communist. I mean, obviously, this is where the West has failed so many times, and it's like, how do you deal with that? All those contradictions, because there's so much disinformation that's everywhere, and what the words mean is being altered all the time, right? That's part of how the West, and that's how empires maintain control, is that they just constantly disorient and disrupt and, make everybody lose all their brain cells by outsourcing them to ChatGPT, a malfunctioning software that tells you to unalive yourself and your neighbors, that's part of the strategy. And also getting COVID 25 times, giving yourself brain damage. You can't educate anyone, left or liberal, if everyone's brain is destroyed by 25 reinfections of a brain damaging virus. You know what I'm saying? That's why, as I point, I have a the control. There's a whole stream I did just about, like, how capitalism is about controlling, or the elite systems are about controlling population control. It's not necessarily just about making money, and that the AI and the viral problems are part and parcel of stopping people from getting organized or even consciousness and educated, or even conscious class, let alone class conscious and educated. There's a 40% drop in people reading books, like actual books, like paper books or even ebooks, or even people. There's a plague of people reporting they're unable to remember what they just read. Right, that is part of the neuronal and damage from microthrombosis, neural fusion, right, and the breaking of the blood-brain barrier that a particular virus does. Right. So so we have to read more theory. Even if you want to read more theory, or we have to do more practice. How are you going to remember what day it is to do the praxis if you can't even remember, your basic information, like your name sometimes, because you got brain damage from getting infected? Or you rely on an AI to tell you. An AI that's owned by Sam Altman and billionaires is not going to tell you when to go to the mass action against capitalism. You know what I'm saying? It's going to conveniently forget for you after you've outsourced your brain to it. And so, anyway, so long story short, so that those are all other challenges that are related. It's not necessarily related to what we're talking about, but I just want to say, like, so these are the lines that are being drawn. We're going to see, there's going to have to be a lot of soul searching amongst all these people. And anybody who doesn't identify as a hard MAGA, even in MAGA, there's a lot of destruction, because they're also farmers are simultaneously. This is the weird thing. It's like, I feel like MAGA and Trump administration is targeting the blue states, but they're actually, like, inadvertent. Some people will say, oh, this is all part of a plan. This is all part of a plan. Like, there's something, it's hard to tell, because, it's like, there's some things that have been done that are so catastrophic. The tariffs have been absolutely self-destructive. Well, it's all about, America is going to debase its currency, then it's going to use that, and the exchange rates, and then it's going to use that to bring industrialization back in it. Okay, well, why are you mass arresting the Hyundai Korean auto plant technicians that are building the plant? They're like doing the reindustrialization, and then you just like got rid of them, and you like blew up your own reindustrialization plant. Like there is chaos. There is not coherent strategy in that. There's all kind of different strategies. There's all kind of missed thoughts. Again, the West, even Donald Trump, one of the thing is his brain is full of Western disinformation too, just like everyone else. What remains of his brain cells, right? It's like that people love the leader of China because he beat them all up and made them love him, right? Like, so Xi Jinping got to where he is by ordering the military into Guangzhou and Tibet and Xinjiang. Like, Xi Jinping. He forced labored the Uyghurs to like write on the wall, right? Because Donald Trump, he reads Western media. Oh, I see. Xi Jinping ordered the Uyghurs to write on the wall in the prison camp, "I love Xi Jinping" 60 million times. And then after they wrote that, then they loved him. Okay? I'm going to give you a hint. That's not how it worked. But that's what Donald Trump thinks because he's from the West. Right? Now, liberals think also that, oh my God, we're all going to be forced labored like a bunch of Uyghurs. It's like, no, or it's like, it's going to be fine because we're white people and it all works out and we all go back to normal. Just like after 2022, we all went back to normal. It's never going to go back to normal. I'm sorry. It's never going to be 2019. Wear a freaking mask if you want to live. Okay? But again, it's like this toxic protagonist syndrome. This is all going to work out because, I'm hero protagonist. I'm Luke Skywalker. It's all going to work out. Okay, but that's delusional. You're not going to be able to deal with the civil war you're in. You're not going to be able to deal with the Imperial Boomerang you're suffering. You're not going to be able to deal with the enemies within. I mean, the thing is, whatever side you're on, you got enemies within. If you're a MAGA, your enemies are liberals and left and all kind of other forces. Whether you hallucinate them, whether they actually are your enemy or not, you have them. If you're a Democrat, you have enemies within. If you're a left, there's enemies all around you. You're an enemy from without to America, which is the thing is Pete Hegseth is not wrong. Ayn Rand correctly said America was based upon selfish individualism and the selfish pursuit of a self-interest and the capitalist industrialist, and that is what America has to build its identity on over the 20th century. That's why she wrote the motion picture screen guide for the preservation of American values for Hollywood to follow, which Hollywood, run by Democrats and liberals, followed. And that's why America is the global capitalist imperialist superpower, and not a democratic socialist Democrat, or anything, not even a slightly progressive place. Because that isn't what it is. Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump are the true face of the United States and the West. And you got to face that, and you got to deal with that, and you got to ask yourself, what can we do to not be that? Like, what can we actually do to not be that? It's particularly for liberals. There's going to have to be some actual soul searching and reading uncomfortable things. That's why I say I don't know how it's going to work out, because maybe liberals, like everything else, just I don't want to hear inconvenient things anymore. Just stop telling me about the Civil War outside. I'm going to pretend like Chicago wasn't invaded. I don't care that there's tanks outside of Seattle. I'm going to go have my Starbucks. I'm having my fucking Starbucks. I'm watching my Disney show, and then I'm going to go to Disneyland. I don't care if I could get shot down by an interceptor because half of America, there's attack. What remains of America's patriot systems are in Mississippi and Texas, and they're shooting down every liberal plane that flies over from Washington to Florida. I'm going to Disney World. I'm going to Disney World. America is going to be full of people in just monumental denial. You know what I'm saying? The less denial, that's why I'm doing this. The less that I don't know if it's going to work. Obviously, I'm not reaching all of America. The less total denial and facing the reality, the less bad it will be. The more total denial, there's going to be some, but the more denial and the more living in 1990 or 1982 or 1969 for boomers, it's JFK's, the Beatles are playing. The more denial people are in, the worse that it's going to get. You know what I'm saying? And so, people got, anyways, this is kind of like the sober up. This is the Silver Spoon anti-Jack the Ripper. They're after our bodily fluids. Oh my God. The guy, I bring up the Doctor Strangelove a lot. Because it's relevant. I mean, the less America is full of deranged, out to lunch, delusional MAGA or former MAGAs and liberals, the better it will be. Because the sooner the worse the decline of the empire, and the decline of the United States as a capitalist empire and as a plutocracy and as a racist settler colony built by slaves, the less destructive and the less painful and the less suffering there will be. So I'm not saying this just to like be mad at Americans or be, some of it is I'm deeply frustrated with a lot of people in the West in general. My fellow people who have been raised in the United States, but ultimately I hope it's for the best. I gotta go. Thanks everybody for watching and listening, if you were. And don't forget, you can help us out at ko-fi.com/silverspook. Give us a direct support at ko-fi.com/silverspook. And you can also help us out at patreon.com/neofeud. If you like the work that we do here. Again, doing mutual aid is going to be really important going forward. I mean, like, let's be real. And that includes like Ko-fi, Patreon, just helping people in your community. People directly, supporting others for the work that they're doing in various ways. It doesn't have to necessarily be monetarily or whatever, but that is part of what has to be built. Is like non-capitalist, non-corporate, non-imperialist, non-U.S. academic, NGO, non-profit or otherwise methods of doing their work in the world that we all collectively have to do, right? So that's like we're a non-capitalist cooperative, right? So technically, Silver Spoon Games, I guess, is like an enemy to the United States, but again, most of the United States is an enemy within. But that's what we're trying to do is make education. We're making games that talk about anti-capitalism, that talk about anti-imperialism from a Native Hawaiian perspective. We also do like land back work here in Hawaii as Native Hawaiians, and ecological restoration and historical education with our own kids and also with others. And here's some of the food sovereignty restoration, which is important as well, that we do, as well as actually this week we actually did making video games practicum class, where we went and we collected a whole bunch of textures in the downtown Hilo area on our island, and I took a bunch of pictures of textures to make a temporarily entitled Neofeud Dismaton, a 3D Doom game similar to the first game, Terminus Machina, in many ways, but set in a Neofeud world. And so we're currently working on that. I'm working on that with the family here, and maybe some other people will also be involved. And it's so anyway, long story short, so we make various games, including Neofeud, which is on sale. So if you want to buy it, it does help us out at the Silver Spoon Cooperative. We also I'm almost done with Neofeud 2. I just finished the Neofeud 2 voice acting, editing it, and adding it to the game. It took me like, oh my God, it took so long. It took basically a year to do. It's 700 pages, so it's massive. I just got it done. But I'm moving on to music, and I hope to release Neofeud 2 at the end of this year. Anyways, just a little games update. But anyway, so making anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist left games is part of what we do, and I think more people are doing that. As I said, I see even in Hawaii, there's more people doing that and trying to get out of the web of control. When you're working for even the empire, when it gussies itself up in a very nice, we're about restoring indigenous resiliency and decolonization, but what are the economic funding mechanisms you're working with? So that's one thing people, anybody can do that. Doesn't mean you have to like quit your job tomorrow and stop working for a corporation, the government, or getting grants from the government, or working for the university system. That's all part of the empire. But like that's something that people should like consider, and at least you could support people that are doing that kind of work if you aren't already doing that. Anyways, help us out at patreon.com/Neofeud. We can definitely use all the support that we can get. And of course, also you can get Neofeud on sale on Neofeud is on sale on Steam at it's for less than the price of a Starbucks coffee or a McDonald's Big Mac. You can get your very own Neofeud, a anti-capitalist retro adventure game, where a cyborg social worker and ex-con robot and an ex-trillionaire princess try to overthrow billionaires and gajillionaires, CEO kings, CEO/kings living in floating palaces above a wastelandified Earth. And it is a game that is also if you have a second to leave even a short review, if you liked it, then it really helps us out to get the game discovered. If a pro-capitalist actually thumbs Neofeud down, they said, "I hate Neofeud because it has Marxist, anti-capitalist messaging, and like as an American capitalist, like this is a disgrace, and it's gonna ruin the world." So I take that as a badge of honor. So if you really don't like a system where a handful of billionaires own more wealth than the vast majority of a country, and that is literally, according to the environmental scientists, literally ruining the world, then Neofeud has the badge of approval from the biz bros and the wannabe Elon Musks. They have given you the people who they wish they were Peter Thiel. They're not Peter Thiel himself because he doesn't have time to play games. He's too busy trying to build literal Mordor with his Palantir. Anyway. So consider leaving a short review to counter all this. It's not good for our review rating, though. So if you have a second to leave one and you haven't yet, please leave a review for Neofeud if you like the game. It would be much appreciated. Also, you can grab Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and Mac and Linux. Decolonators, Indigestar, Pigeon with Gun. These are several other games you can get on itch.io. And, of course, you can also help us out. You can follow at Silver Spoon Games at mastodon.social, at Silver Spoon Games at wandering.shop, or you can follow Holly at Allergic to Blue. And where we can follow Silver Spook on all kind of platforms, and Holly is also Allergic to Blue. Holly is a partner here, moderator, also partner in the Silver Spook Cooperative, and also partner in having a family and young family members as well. And Holly is, of course, I gotta wrap up now, so. So I'm trying to speed through. I'm thinking about this thing I set up with people in the afternoon, and I'm like way behind, so I gotta get out of here. Thank you to our patrons. Without your support, it's hard to keep doing this work. So thank you so much to all of these very gracious patrons. Thank you very much. And until next time, keep mirror shades polished, be excellent to each other, and have a good rest of your day. And I know that this is a little bit of too scary of a video, but it's just sometimes you gotta shock people awake. Wake up call. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.